The sun was sinking low on the horizon as I gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white with fury. Karen had gone too far this time, reporting my truck to the HOA for unsightly parking. Well, if she wanted a war, I'd give her one. I fired up the engine and pulled out of the driveway, a plan already forming in my mind. This was payback, and it was going to be sweet. I rolled down the window and leaned out, making sure Karen saw me as I slowly cruised down the street, my truck rumbling menacingly. She was standing on her front lawn, arms crossed, a smug expression on her face. I pulled into my driveway, pretending to fiddle with something in the cab, all the while keeping her in my peripheral vision. Just then, an idea struck. I hopped out of the truck and strode over to her perfectly manicured lawn. "Hey, Karen," I called out, injecting a note of false friendliness into my voice. "I couldn't help but notice your sprinklers were acting up again. Mind if I take a look?" Karen's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "What are you talking about? My sprinklers are fine." I shrugged nonchalantly. Must be my imagination then. Say, speaking of lawns, how's yours looking these days? Seems like it could use a good mowing." Before she could react, I turned and headed back to my truck, a sly grin spreading across my face. I climbed in and started the engine, revving it a few times for good measure. Then, ever so slowly, I began to maneuver the massive vehicle onto her pristine lawn, crushing the delicate blades of grass beneath its heavy tires. Karen's mouth dropped open in horror. "What do you think you're doing?" she screeched. "Get off my lawn this instant." I leaned out the window, feigning surprise. "Oh, didn't you know? There's no law against driving on your own property." I paused, savoring the look of outrage on her face. "And technically, this is my property too, since we share a homeowners association." Her face flushed with anger. "You can't do this. It's against the rules." I chuckled darkly. But you see, Karen, you're the one who broke the rules first. And now, I'm simply exercising my rights as a homeowner." I eased the truck forward, slowly crushing more of her precious lawn. Karen stood there, fuming, as I continued to desecrate her meticulously maintained yard. The look of pure rage on her face was priceless. I had finally found a way to get back at her for all her petty, spiteful behavior over the years. This was only the beginning. The next morning, I woke up early, a mischievous grin spreading across my face. I quickly got dressed and headed outside, my eyes scanning the neighborhood for any sign of Karen. Sure enough, there she was, standing on her front lawn, a look of utter disgust on her face as she surveyed the damage to her precious grass. I couldn't help but chuckle to myself. Last night's little stunt had clearly gotten under her skin. I sauntered over to the edge of her lawn, hands in my pockets. "Morning, Karen. How's the lawn looking today?" She whirled around, her eyes narrowing. You did this on purpose, didn't you?" she spat. I shrugged nonchalantly. "I have no idea what you're talking about. I was just exercising my right to drive on my own property." "Your own property," Karen scoffed. "This is my lawn, you idiot. And now it's ruined because of your stupid truck." I feigned a look of concern. "Oh dear, I hope it's not too much of an inconvenience for you. After all, I'd hate for you to have to go through the trouble of filing another complaint with the HOA." Karen's face twisted with fury. "You're going to pay for this, you know. I'm going to make sure the HOA fines you for this stunt, and then I'm going to sue you for damages." I couldn't help but laugh. "Go ahead, Karen. Do your worst, but let me tell you something. I'm not going to let you push me around anymore. This is war." With that, I turned on my heel and strode back to my house, leaving a seething Karen in my wake. I knew she would try to retaliate, but I was ready for her. This was just the beginning of my plan to get back at her for all the grief she'd caused me over the years. As I entered my house, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. Karen had finally messed with the wrong person, and now she was going to learn a painful lesson. I wasn't going to back down, no matter what she threw at me. This was my chance to take control and show her who was really in charge. True to her word, Karen wasted no time in filing a formal complaint with the Homeowners Association. I could practically feel the rage radiating off her as she stormed into the HOA office, her face twisted with indignation. A few days later, the HOA president, Mr. Johnson, came knocking on my door. I opened it with a feigned look of innocence. "How can I help you, Mr. Johnson?" He cleared his throat, his expression stern. "I'm here about a complaint filed against you by your neighbor Karen. Apparently, you've been driving your truck onto her lawn, causing damage to her property." I nodded solemnly. "Yes, I'm aware of the situation. I'm terribly sorry for the inconvenience, Mr. Johnson. It was never my intention to cause any harm. I was simply trying to inspect my neighbor's sprinklers, as I was concerned they might be malfunctioning and affecting the shared water line." Mr. Johnson raised a skeptical eyebrow. "That's not what Karen tells me. She claims you deliberately drove onto her lawn to spite her." I let out a heavy sigh. "I can assure you that's not the case at all. I would never intentionally damage someone else's property. I'm a responsible homeowner who cares deeply about our community." The HOA president studied me for a moment, weighing my words. "Well, regardless of your intentions, the damage to Karen's lawn is quite extensive. The HOA will have to fine you to cover the cost of the repairs." I nodded solemnly. "I understand, Mr. Johnson. I'll be sure to pay the fine promptly. And please, let Karen know that I'm truly sorry for the inconvenience. I'll be more mindful of my vehicle's placement going forward." As soon as Mr. Johnson left, I couldn't help but chuckle to myself. That had been almost too easy. Karen may have thought she had me cornered, but I had been one step ahead of her the entire time. While I had no intention of paying the fine, I had managed to play the part of the contrite, responsible neighbor perfectly. Mr. Johnson seemed to buy my act, and I had a feeling Karen would be in for a rude awakening when she realized her little stunt had backfired. I leaned back in my chair, a sly grin spreading across my face. The game was just getting started, and I was ready to take the gloves off. Karen had no idea what I had in store for her. The next few days, I made sure to keep a low profile, avoiding any further confrontations with Karen. I knew she was probably fuming, waiting for me to make another move. But I was biding my time, carefully plotting my next step. In the meantime, I decided to do a little digging. I started by discreetly reaching out to some of the other neighbors, casually asking about their experiences with the HOA and Karen. What I learned only fueled my determination to take her down. It turned out Karen was quite the neighborhood nuisance, constantly filing complaints and trying to enforce the HOA's rules to an almost obsessive degree. Several of my neighbors shared stories of her harassing them over minor infractions, always with a self-righteous smile on her face. Armed with this new intel, I knew exactly how to proceed. I spent the next few days meticulously documenting every single one of Karen's past violations, from overgrown hedges to unapproved paint colors. It was time to turn the tables on her. Finally, the day of the HOA meeting arrived. I made sure to arrive early, taking a seat near the front of the room. When Karen sauntered in, her eyes immediately locked onto me, a smug grin plastered on her face. As the meeting commenced, Karen wasted no time in bringing up the issue of my destructive truck. "The HOA needs to take immediate action against my neighbor," she proclaimed, her voice dripping with self-importance. "His blatant disregard for our community's rules is unacceptable." I raised my hand, feigning a look of concern. "Excuse me, Mr. Johnson, if I may." The HOA president nodded, and I stood up, clearing my throat. "I'd like to address Karen's concerns, if I may." Karen's eyes widened in surprise, but she quickly composed herself, crossing her arms defiantly. "Well, this should be good," she muttered under her breath. I turned to face the room, my expression sober. "I want to start by apologizing for the incident with my truck. I understand that my actions may have caused some disruption, and I take full responsibility for that. I paused, letting my words sink in. However, I feel it's important to put this in context. I proceeded to lay out a detailed list of all the previous violations Karen had committed over the years, citing specific dates, photographic evidence, and HOA guidelines. The room erupted in murmurs as my neighbors realized the true extent of Karen's hypocritical behavior. Karen's face grew increasingly pale as I continued, her eyes darting around the room in a panic. When I finally finished, the HOA president turned to her, his expression stern. "Karen, it seems you have quite a history of infractions yourself. I'm afraid we'll have to review all of these incidents and determine an appropriate course of action." As the room erupted in applause, Karen's face crumpled in defeat. She had been outmaneuvered, and she knew it. I couldn't help but feel a surge of satisfaction. This was just the beginning of my payback. In the aftermath of the HOA meeting, Karen was fuming. I could practically see the steam coming out of her ears as she stormed out of the room, her face a mask of pure rage. As the other neighbors congratulated me on my victory, I simply smiled and shrugged, feigning modesty. But on the inside, I was grinning from ear to ear. I had finally found a way to turn the tables on Karen, and the satisfaction was almost overwhelming. Over the next few days, I kept a low profile, waiting for the dust to settle. I knew Karen wouldn't take this lying down. She was the type to hold a grudge and plot her revenge. But I was ready for her, my own plan already in motion. Sure enough, about a week later, I spotted Karen lurking around my property, her eyes narrowed in suspicion. I waved at her cheerfully, which only seemed to further annoy her. She huffed and stormed off, muttering under her breath. A few days later, I came home to find a massive pile of dog poop on my front lawn. I couldn't help but laugh. Karen was clearly resorting to juvenile tactics now. But I wasn't about to let her get the last laugh. I immediately got to work, carefully collecting evidence and documenting the incident. Then, I marched over to Karen's house, a stern expression on my face. "Karen, I'm sorry to bother you, but I think we need to have a little chat," I said, my voice dripping with false concern. She eyed me warily. "What do you want?" I held up a clear plastic bag, the dog poop clearly visible inside. "I found this little gift on my lawn today, and I have a strong feeling it came from your house." Karen's eyes widened, and she opened her mouth to protest, but I cut her off. Now I could go straight to the HOA with this, but I'd much rather handle this between us. After all, we're neighbors, and I'd hate for this to escalate any further. She glared at me, her lips pressed into a thin line. "What do you want?" I smiled, my expression benign. "I'm glad you asked. I think it's time we put this little feud behind us, don't you? How about we call a truce?" Karen eyed me suspiciously. "A truce? What are you getting at?" "It's simple," I said, my tone disarmingly calm. "You leave me and my property alone, and I'll do the same for you. No more complaints, no more passive-aggressive stunts. We go our separate ways and stay out of each other's business." She seemed to consider my offer for a moment, her eyes narrowed. "And what if I refuse?" I shrugged nonchalantly. "Well, then I'm afraid I'll have no choice but to take this to the HOA. And we both know how they tend to side with the homeowner who can provide the most evidence." Karen's face contorted with fury, but I could see the resignation in her eyes. She knew she was cornered, and she didn't have the upper hand anymore. "Fine," she spat. "We have a truce. But don't think this is over, not by a long shot." I smiled, pocketing the evidence bag. "Of course, Karen. I wouldn't dream of it." As she stormed back into her house, I couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. I had finally won this round, and the thrill of it was almost intoxicating. But I knew better than to let my guard down. This was just the beginning of a much longer game. For the next few weeks, an uneasy truce seemed to settle over the neighborhood. Karen kept her distance, and I made sure to stay off her lawn and out of her way. It was an uncomfortable peace, but I knew it couldn't last forever. Sure enough, one day as I was mowing my lawn, I noticed a strange figure lurking in the bushes at the edge of my property. I squinted, trying to get a better look, and my heart sank when I recognized the familiar shape of Karen's car. I had immediately shut off the mower and approached the bushes, my jaw set with determination. "Karen, I know you're out there. Come on out and stop skulking around like a thief in the night." There was a moment of silence, and then Karen emerged, her face flushed with embarrassment. I was just admiring your landscaping," she stammered, her eyes darting around nervously. I crossed my arms, fixing her with a stern gaze. "Cut the crap, Karen. I know you're up to something, and I won't stand for it. We had a deal, remember?" She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, her hands clasped in front of her. I don't know what you're talking about," she said weakly, her voice betraying her lie. I took a step closer, my eyes narrowing. "Listen, Karen, I've had enough of your games. If you try to pull anything else, I won't hesitate to take it straight to the HOA. And this time, I won't be playing nice." Karen's face paled, and she took a step back, her eyes wide with fear. You wouldn't dare," she stammered. I leaned in, my voice low and menacing. "Try me. I'm not the same pushover you remember. I'm not afraid to fight fire with fire, and I promised you, I'll win." With that, I turned on my heel and strode back to the house, leaving a shaken and defeated Karen in my wake. As I closed the front door behind me, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. I had drawn a line in the sand, and I knew Karen wouldn't dare cross it. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Karen was like a cornered animal, and she would stop at nothing to get her revenge. I would have to stay on my toes, always vigilant and ready to counter her next move. The game had just gotten a whole lot more intense, and I had no intention of losing. The next few weeks were tense, to say the least. I could feel Karen's eyes on me every time I stepped outside, and I caught her muttering under her breath as she scurried past my house. It was clear she was plotting something, and I was determined to stay one step ahead of her. One day, as I was mowing my lawn, I noticed a small, discreet envelope tucked under my front doormat. Curious, I set down the lawnmower and picked it up, my heart pounding. Inside was a note, scrawled in a shaky hand. "I know what you did. Meet me at the park tonight at 8 p.m., or else." I felt a chill run down my spine. Whatever Karen was planning, it was serious. But I wasn't about to be intimidated. If she wanted a confrontation, I was more than ready to give her one. That evening, I made my way to the park, my senses on high alert. As I approached the designated meeting spot, I spotted Karen, lurking in the shadows like a guilty criminal. I took a deep breath and strode over to her, my expression stern. "All right, Karen, I'm here. What's this all about?" She stepped forward, her eyes narrowed. "You know damn well what this is about," she hissed. "I've been watching you, and I know what you've been up to." I raised an eyebrow, feigning confusion. "I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about." Karen's face contorted with rage. "Don't play dumb with me. I saw you tampering with my sprinklers last night. You're trying to sabotage me, aren't you?" I couldn't help but chuckle. "Tampering with your sprinklers? Really, Karen? That's the best you can come up with." "It's true," she spat. "I saw you sneaking around, messing with the controls. And now, my sprinklers are malfunctioning, and my lawn is starting to die." I shook my head, unable to contain my amusement. "Karen, I think you're letting your paranoia get the best of you. I had nothing to do with your sprinklers, and I certainly have no desire to sabotage your lawn." She took a step closer, her finger jabbing into my chest. "I'm warning you, if you don't stop this nonsense, I'm going straight to the police. I have evidence, and I'm not afraid to use it." I held up my hands, feigning surrender. Whoa, calm down, Karen. Let's not do anything rash here. I'm telling you the truth. I haven't done anything to your sprinklers or your lawn. Karen's eyes narrowed, and for a moment I thought she might lunge at me. But then her expression shifted, and a wicked grin spread across her face. "We'll see about that," she said, her voice dripping with malice. "I'm not going to let you get away with this. Not this time." With that, she turned and stalked off, leaving me to wonder what fresh hell she had in store for me. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Karen had clearly made good on her threat, and the police showed up at my door, armed with a search warrant and a long list of accusations. Apparently, Karen had reported me for tampering with her sprinklers, vandalism, and even attempted arson. I was stunned, my mouth agape as the officers ransacked my home, searching for any evidence to support her ludicrous claims. In the end, they found nothing. No tampering, no vandalism, no signs of arson. I stood there, hands on my hips, as the dejected officers packed up their equipment and prepared to leave. "Well, Mr. Daniels, it seems your neighbor's claims didn't hold up," the lead officer said, his expression apologetic. "We'll be sure to let her know that we found no evidence to support her allegations." I nodded, my eyes narrowed. "I appreciate that, officer. But I think it's time we take this to the next level." The officer raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "I want to file a formal complaint against Karen. She's been harassing me for years, and this latest stunt is just the tip of the iceberg. I want her charged with filing false reports and wasting police resources." The officer considered my request, his brow furrowed in thought. "That's a serious allegation, Mr. Daniels. Are you sure you want to go down that road?" I nodded, my jaw set with determination. "Absolutely. I'm done playing by her rules. It's time she learned that her actions have consequences." The officer sighed, then nodded. "All right, we'll get the paperwork started. But I have to warn you, this could get messy." I couldn't help but smile. I'm counting on it. As the police car pulled away, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. Karen had finally gone too far, and now it was time for her to face the music. I knew this wasn't the end of our feud, but for once, I felt like I had the upper hand. I strolled back into my house, my head held high. Karen wasn't going to know what hit her. This was my chance to finally put an end to her petty, spiteful behavior once and for all. And I wasn't going to stop until she learned a hard, humiliating lesson. The game was on, and this time, I was going to win.